Ladies and gentlemen, I could not be more pleased to be able to play a small part in the 25th anniversary celebrations of the Tenant Farmers Association, even if it is in this somewhat disembodied form. Now, as you might expect, I've been doing a little research into the Tenant Farmers Association, and in doing so, I discovered that when it was set up, it was done in the teeth of some pretty vociferous opposition, something that I have experienced once in a while. But the fact that you have survived and flourished for a quarter of a century is, I think, testimony to the significant and much-needed service you provide to tenant farmers. Certainly, during the last 25 years, agriculture has gone through probably the greatest changes and challenges it has ever known. Indeed, farming today is all but unrecognizable to what it was in the 1970s and 1980s. And there is no doubt that tenant farmers have faced particular tests of fortitude. Now, no one here needs me to remind them of the 1970s, when city financial institutions started to buy land for the first time as a protection against exceptionally high inflation, forcing land prices up in a market where supply was very limited and setting new and, in some cases, unrealistic levels of rent. Thankfully, with low inflation, this process has all but been reversed now, although land prices remain punishingly high. And then three-generation succession, created under the 1976 Agricultural Miscellaneous Provisions Act, created one or two unexpected problems of its own, especially for those wishing to take on new tenancies. With landlords reluctant to re-let farms and existing tenants determined to do all they could to keep them, the effect on new entrants was pretty devastating. So it is to the great credit of the Tenant Farmers Association that one of the first major pieces of legislation with which it was involved was the 1984 Agricultural Holdings Act, which changed the law in an attempt to increase the supply of new farms to rent. However, the challenges for the whole agricultural community remain undimmed, although perhaps now, with the reform of the Common Agricultural Policy behind us, at least for now, it is possible to see opportunities too. Increasingly, it is quality, not quantity, that matters, and where else could you find better conditions for producing some of the finest beef and lamb, and maybe even, dare I mention it, mutton, in the world than here in the United Kingdom? We have some of the most productive grassland and some of the finest native breeds, albeit still a rarity, but hopefully not for long. And we are blessed with some of the best farmers. And many of these are family farmers who have been on the land for generations and have priceless experience and wisdom of the sort which cannot be taught in a classroom, but which are absorbed and inherited. There are many such farmers, I'm glad to say, on the Duchy of Cornwall estate, and I know just what a vital role they play. They often work on a smaller scale and are the true guardians of our countryside. They not only care for the land and maintain it, but they provide children for the local schools and custom for the village shop and pub, if there are any left. And more often than not, their wives run the farm business, sit on the parochial church council, and are school governors. And on top of that, these are the farmers who have inherited knowledge about the local conditions, about the local soil types and the weather, and about the crops and livestock that do best. In fact, I've always believed they are hefted people and the backbone of the countryside. So we depend on them, perhaps I should say on you. And in an ever more uncertain world, I happen to believe that food security takes on an even greater importance. And we must ensure that this country is able to produce as much to supply its own needs as possible. We cannot do that unless we keep farmers farming. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, I've been doing what I can to encourage more cooperation amongst farmers so that they can keep their costs down and deal with the retailers in a way which means the farm gate price is reasonable, And this could not be more important for our dairy farmers, who are struggling so desperately at the moment. And I know from my discussions with retailers, during which I constantly make the case for the small farmer, how essential it is for them that farmers cooperate so that they can have a guaranteed and constant supply of produce. And, ladies and gentlemen, for the farmers there is always strength in numbers. For instance, I have been working on Dartmoor and in other parts of the country, particularly in national parks, to set up marketing initiatives to help farming communities come together and better understand the opportunities for selling their produce and how to do it. We have, for instance, a very successful venture in Scotland called the North Highland Initiative, under which beef and dairy farmers are now selling their produce under the May Selections brand, after the Castle of May in Caithness, and I hope we might also see some interesting developments on Dartmoor and in the Peak District in due course. The Duchy of Cornwall is similarly trying to keep ahead of the game in other ways, and so we have set up a small working party to look at alternative sources of energy on the estate. Whatever happens, there can be no doubt that biofuels and energy crops are going to play an increasingly important role in the future of farming. Of course, diversification remains an important way in which farmers can supplement their incomes and develop whole new enterprises. From the Duchy point of view, we are looking for ways to invest more in diversification and to encourage it with new licenses. There are already some outstandingly successful examples, ranging from farm shops, stunning rural settings for weddings and other events, holiday cottages, sea fishing and boating ventures, agricultural contractors, and even a worm farm. But we know we need to do more, and so we have started restructuring some of our agreements to give our tenants more scope to establish new ventures. Everyone at the Duchy understands the importance of keeping farms together where possible and encouraging new tenants. We are therefore particularly pleased that we have recently relet 2 farms in Cornwall, as it happens, both to farmers in conversion to an organic system, with exciting plans to sell their produce direct to the customer. We have also created 2 new small starter unit farms. In this case, both the tenants have other rural businesses, and I cannot tell you how much pleasure it gives me to be able to provide the first steps for at least some on the farming ladder. At the same time, we continually look at the structure of farms, encouraging succession where possible and seeking opportunities to create new tenancies, supporting longer-term farm business tenancies. And we try, too, to help those who want to retire or reduce the scale of their business. Above all, I am absolutely determined that the Duchy's land agents will remain in-house, because I happen to believe that continuity and the personal approach is the best way to build a true understanding and partnership with tenant farmers. This inevitably brings us in touch with many of the organizations and professions that are involved in rural matters, not least the Tenant Farmers Association and your remarkable chairman, Reg Hayden, who has worked tirelessly for the association for nearly half of its life, and your equally committed Chief Executive, George Dunn. I can only say how much I and the Duchy value our links with you, which I like to think are strong and enduring. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to send all the members of the Tenant Farmers Association my warmest good wishes and congratulations on your Silver Jubilee, and my heartfelt thanks for all that you have done and continue to do for tenant farmers and the wider rural community in this country.